Kurt Schork was a very valued friend and colleague of mine, and his death was a terrible shock. I first knew him in Kurdistan in 1991, immediately after in the period after the Gulf War of that year. And I went to Iraqi Kurdistan knowing that there was one other journalist there. And I spent the New Year's Eve, as a matter of fact, of 91-92 with him and the man who later went on to be the Foreign Minister of Iraq, and drinking tea. Kurt was drinking tea. I was drinking whiskey, and he was eating boiled eggs because he was a vegetarian, and anybody who's been to Iraqi Kurdistan knows that it's not a good place to be a vegetarian. Chickpeas, boiled eggs. And he said, well, I've been really looking forward to you guys. How long are you staying here? I said, we're here for about a couple of days. He said, what, a couple of days? I was expecting you here to be week for weeks. I've been on my own. Come on, guys, it's great stories. But it was not to be. The BBC's appetite for story is a bit less than Reuters. And he told me then, he started telling me about his extraordinary background, the other jobs that he'd had, the fact he'd come to journalism relatively late in life. I saw him not that many months after that in Sarajevo, where the war was starting in the spring of 1992. By the time I got there in, I suppose, June or July maybe of that year, I was already at Johnny-come-lately because Kurt was very well established, his feet were well under the table. And he said to me, I'm really getting to know this place. I've even found there's a fantastic new fixer I'm going to hire. Very beautiful. Sabina's her name, she's sitting in the front row at the moment. And Kurt was a man whose journalistic skills there were, to call them forensic would be to do the whole concept of being forensic. I mean, he was razor sharp. He was the leader of the press corps. He was the leader of the pack over a period. He tormented some of the hapless spokesmen for Unprofor. Absolutely tormented them. There was a poor man called Barry Frewer, who there was one day an innocent question, and Kurt said, Barry, would you characterize what's happening in Sarajevo as a siege? We'd all been calling it a siege. We assumed it was a siege. The city was surrounded. There was fighting. Because Kurt had heard that the UN weren't calling it a siege. And this poor man tied himself in knots for, well, to him it must have seemed like months, but I think it was only a matter of days or weeks. I think finally he was relieved of his command, sent back to Canada. I mean, he was actually quite a nice guy. I felt a little bit sorry for him, but once Mr. Schork scented blood, that was it. And I have to say the rest of us piled in directly after him. As I say, he was a good friend of mine, and we had good, but you know, when he was on a story, he didn't let anybody get in the way. The day I made the mistake of parking my armoured Land Rover at Sarajevo Hospital just so it slightly impeded his exit, and I was doing a piece to camera, he went berserk. What the hell are you doing, you bloody TV? Oh, he didn't say bloody. TV people, you know, doing pieces to camera here, don't you know I have to file? And of course in those days you had to get back to file. So, you know, he was a snarling beast that moment. He didn't even apologise later, but, you know, I kind of understood why he did it. I saw him too, as well as many times in Bosnia, in Grozny, when the war started there in the winter of 94-95. And a lot of us who'd been in the Balkans decamped en masse, pretty much, to Grozny, which was, without question, the worst, most dangerous, most frightening place I've ever been to before or since. And I think everybody who was there at that time would probably agree with that. Kurt, I have to say, was in his element. Absolutely in his element. I first bumped into him in the middle of Grozny in a place called Minutka Square. It was being shelled, it was on fire. He was well into the story, and he said, there's no good around here. You've got to get down into town. You've got to get deep into town. I said, you'll be joking. Look, the place is on fire. He said, no, we can do it. Come on. And then he said, and then there's a bridge. He said, and unless you run over the bridge, you don't get the tie. I said, why can't we run over the bridge? I think he was joking. I didn't run over the bridge. I didn't get the tie. And I never really saw him wearing one either. So, but we had, he took us to a place which the side, a block of flats which the whole side had been torn off we climbed right up to the top and had an extraordinary view over the city. I suppose it was a bit of a bizarre place to be. His death, I was in Lebanon when he was killed with Miguel, and I had been working. One of my close colleagues there had been killed the day before, so I didn't hear about it straight away because I was at the funeral in Beirut. So I went back down to the south the next day, and someone said to me, you know, terrible news about Kurt Miguel. I said, what do you mean? And I was told what had happened. I was absolutely shocked. And I have to say, on that day, those 3 deaths, 3 friends, 2 continents, 2 separate wars, for me, I somewhat fell out of love with journalism on that day. And since then, I've rather struggled to rekindle the love that I had because of the dangers of the enterprise, which we're going to hear a little bit more of tonight. You know, I think journalists who go to dangerous places, if you say to them, is a story worth your life? Then I think most of them, if they've got a grain of sense in their heads, will say, absolutely, it's not worth my life. Are you mad? Of course it's not worth my life. But then they'll say, but I won't die today because, you know, I'm going to be very careful and I'm experienced and I've been here before and I've got a good fixer and, you know, we're only going to go a little way down the road. But the problem is in journalism, but there's always another corner to go around. And however rational you are about the whole thing, if you're in the wrong place at the wrong time, then that's it. And that's one of the sad truths about our business if you go to dangerous places. I don't want to end on this mournful tone. He was a great guy, Kurt. He was still a vegetarian in Sarajevo, and that wasn't a good place to be a vegetarian either. Spent quite a bit of time with him there trying to find this mythical pizzeria that he was always trying to get to. Whenever we went, you know, even in quieter times, I never managed to eat a pizza there. But he didn't like the veal steaks and the other kinds of things that were on offer. So it's great that everybody's here, not just to remember him, but to celebrate the great work of a new generation of journalists. I think that he has been greatly missed in the last, well, getting on for nearly 10 years now, since 9/11. All the stories that have unfolded since then, especially in Iraq and Afghanistan, where I'm certain he would have been asking some very tough questions to new generations of Barry Ferrers and getting into the places that mattered at the times that mattered, and bearing the truth and asking questions and not taking no for an answer. And I think one thing, you know, wherever he is at the moment, I'm sure he's very glad that there are people here who've done this great work, who are getting this award in his name, in the traditions of what he stood for and what he did. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're now into the business part of the evening after me, and Stephen Jukes, who's from the Kurt Schott Memorial Fund, and he is going to be your host as the awards. He's going to say a few things and then talk you through the awards.